Welcome to Worship in Waves, where the head of the country is considered evil by many. Every word he says incites thousands of people, maybe even more, and all hell is breaking loose on the streets. Now, can you guess what country I'm talking about, guys?
I can only guess two.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
either our country or
one other country
another.
that sounds similar.
The one that can't be mentioned.
Hey, my name is Josh Stars, and I'm with Iking and Rory.
Hey,
Okay.
And today we're going to talk about racism in general, police brutality, the protests, the riots, and all the looting, and what we Christians should do about it. So, first, really quick, do you think racism is real?
let me go ahead and say
Yeah, sure.
racism is real because uh, people are experiencing racism all over the world. Uh, Especially now during these Corona times, I was able to hear about some cases where a few Asian families were attacked in the U.S. because of their ethnicity, because they were Asian, and some person I think feared that they were bringing the coronavirus or something. So for me, racism is a real and horrible thing that's present in our world.
On racism, actually, I've experienced racism before. Like when I was younger and when I was in the US, I've been bullied before for being, Asian and short and whatever other characteristics that we possess. And I've been seeing that the same thing, like my brother said, in the Philippines, even. Some Chinese people are being treated differently. Same thing in families, like you said, are being attacked in America for being uh, Asian. Just because many people are afraid, and this is what the coronavirus and all these things that are happening right now can instill within us fear, and that's what really breaks out this whole racism thing, and especially right now for the African Americans, right? They're claiming that they're being oppressed, and this was something in the making, and something in you know this was something that was coming, and then it was just a matter of time till racism became something of a topic in media. So yeah, I do believe that racism exists.
It's a problem not just in the US, but all over the globe, right? Even we as Filipinos, we experience it. Even here, even when we go to other countries, we experience it. Our friends who are overseas Filipino workers, they tell stories of their experiences with racism. Asians were generally a little bit racist to each other, to even to other Asians. But it's kind of different if the racism is coming from people with power, people in authority. I have like a few theories why that is. Like, if you get to wonder why would people really uh, feel they are superior to other races? Like, where does that thing come from? Now, I want to show you some clips of recent displays of racism that has been circling around in the internet in the past couple of weeks.
Even live in Louisiana, so how would I have a? You don't know my name, so how can you tell me I have an open warrant in Louisiana?
Sir,
Stop.
Clarence,
Calvary
hold on.
coming.
Hello.
Stop.
I'm confused.
He
He don't even live in Louisiana.
No. You don't. How can you tell me I have something you don't know my name? You just pulled up in front of my house and then. I don't trust because you shaking like you scared or something. You're pulling.
Okay.
I don't trust you. You shaking like you scared.
He don't live in
No,
Louisiana.
I don't even live in Louisiana. How the hell would I have a warrant in Louisiana?
Quentin, you already said your name was that.
My name is not Quentin.
So, we just said racism isn't only exclusive to black people in America. It also happens to Latinos and Asians in America, and it even happens to Filipinos like us everywhere we go. There's also a different kind of racism, like not the negative kind of racism, but have you noticed that when Westerners come to the Philippines, they get treated much better than how regular Filipinos treat each other. You notice that?
Actually, I did notice that. I have an example, actually. I remember when my mother, my aunt, two aunts, Auntie Lux and Auntie Lynn, they were going to a hotel in Manila. And when they went to this hotel, they reserved a particular room. Now, a certain person reserved a room, a foreigner. And the hotel staff, I think it was the manager, said that he requested that they give up the room for the foreigner. Now, my aunt was very upset, and she was saying, "Why should I give up my room for this foreigner? I also have dollars. I live in, uh, I live in Tacoma. I live in the U.S. My dollars are just as good as his." In the end, she was forced to give up the room because the manager had to prioritize the foreigner who was in their hotel. I don't know why he prioritized it, but form in some way, I think he was getting treated better because he was foreigner, and we're Filipinos living in on our own country, and we're being treated second class. So yeah, I can see that happening here.
To pick up where Rory left off, I think it's because the Filipino people have been enslaved for so long. That's my theory, okay? So we've been enslaved by the Spanish for how long, Rory? How long is it? Like 400 years or so, or something like that. And it has been ingrained in our psyche that we are always second class citizens, even in our own country. So I guess, as strange as it sounds, our society hasn't broken free from uh that, what is it, passed down or inherited mindset that just makes us less than what we should really be. And in a way, like, for me and Rory, I don't think it's been passed down to both of us because we lived most of our early childhood abroad, and we never felt second class. Like even I got bullied when I went to school in this US, but I never felt that I should apologize for being Asian or for being Filipino. And when we came back here to the Philippines, I don't know about Rory, but I was really shocked that there's a certain special level of hospitality reserved for foreigners, especially Americans or Europeans, that isn't given to local Filipinos. And it's kind of disheartening.
Yeah, it's true. People are so racist that uh, they even made this guy white, even though we all know he probably wasn't right.
He definitely wasn't European, and
He
he definitely
wasn't.
did not have blue eyes or blonde
He
hair.
was like really handsome in that picture. Yeah, model on that picture.
Have you ever thought like why people are so racist? I have a little theory though. I read this online and I kind of went with it. I kind of did some research and it's plausible that this might be one of the things that's fueling the idea of racism. Now, you're familiar with Darwinism, right, or the theory of evolution? Like you've heard of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think high school. We were introduced to it in high school.
Yeah,
Yeah, a good old Darwinism, the theory of evolution, that the species, the basic tenets of evolution, like by natural selection, as defined by Darwin, are things like more individuals are produced than what will survive uh, every generation. So, and because of the environment, because of the changes in the environment, our bodies supposedly adapt, and those who adapt better than others will survive and they will overtake, replace the weaker species. Now, some of the things he also writes in his books, uh, dug a little bit of research, and like Darwin also believed that certain races were better than than others. Something else that Darwinism might have like inspired, like sexism, because he also has strong opinions when it comes to gender. Like in his books, he even stated that men and women would never be the same. He said men have larger brains So he would therefore be more courageous, pugnacious, and energetic than women with a more inventive genius. Like, if you just read that, it's kind of funny that uh, the modern worldview sees it as like their default way of looking at how the world was created, but then they hate the things that actually, like, they hate racism, they hate sexism, but both of those things probably came or were inspired by that. Like in Darwin's book, The Descent of Man, he describes Africans, Indians, South Americans, Polynesians, and Eskimos as savages. And he states that the highest races and lowest races differ in moral disposition and intellect. So the better, whiter races will always be smarter and have better morals than the savages. And he even supports that um, the white Europeans should exterminate and replace the savages. It's in his writings. And now, yeah, like I said, it's funny how the world wants to believe in or tries to push Darwinism and the theory of evolution, like this is how it happened. But then some of the fruits of this kind of thinking are some of the biggest things that is plaguing the modern world right now. So what do you think about that?
I think especially with Darwinism, we know it's a really, 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 really old way of thinking. So I think we just leave the past in the past, because Darwin's theory applied to his time, where people thought differently and people looked at things differently. But uh, you can't apply what was thought into the past or thought about in the past in the modern time now, because everything is different. We're no longer uh, comparing races because of intelligence and stuff. Because like with the advent of the internet and with the advent of unified education, like like there's different uh, educational levels. Like we have high school, college, elementary, kindergarten, preschool. So uh, quote unquote intelligence or being quote unquote superior is no longer a racial thing. For me, it's more of a privilege thing. Like if your parents were able to provide a certain level of education for you, and if you yourself were able to absorb it properly, then it's not about you and your race, but it's about you and the opportunities that you had and that you took or you took for granted.
On that point on how people are thinking, I actually think that's a good point my brother raises. The way people thought back then and the way people think now. But I don't think it's entirely the case for some other people, because there's still some people out there that believe, in racism, and people that still, judge you by your color. I can remember an example from my college teacher. He was an English teacher, my English 2B teacher, and he spent some time in America. I think he spent about a year or so teaching children there, uh, English. And they were actually surprised that, a Filipino was teaching English to Americans. And some of them were, very apprehensive about that whole idea. Like this brown skinned person teaching us white Americans, and we should be, we should know more than this guy. And they actually even asked him a question: is it true that Filipinos still live in trees? And my teacher replied, where did you get that idea that Filipinos live in trees? And he said, you guys are like monkeys, right? You live in trees, you live in the higher parts of the branches and stuff like that. And it kind of shocked me when he told that story to me, that, racism is still, even till now, the ideas that people had back then are still present. Not like, as probably not as bad as it was before, like my brother mentioned, but I think it's still present enough to be something that, other people could be offended by. And it's kind of scary mindset that we have to watch out for.
I wanna show you a video clip here of something.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rugged red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
So yeah, that video was really dramatic, and when I saw it the first time, it kind of shook me. But the thing is, racism is like everywhere, and racism isn't just limited to, like, I know this is gonna be really hard to say, but it's not just with black people. And right now, all the attention is just with the blacks because something really bad happened. But it's not just them, and it's not just in America. It's everywhere. And yeah, it's a problem, but this kind of problem, I don't think you can solve it by like posting black profile pictures or listen to rap music on Spotify, or rioting or looting or being violent to the police, or just expressing yourself so wildly like that, or not even making videos like that, because videos like that will probably just antagonize all the parties involved, help the cause. There are some people protesting peacefully, there are some people protesting violently. Like, those are just solutions, short-term solutions that may work now, but it won't really solve the bigger problem. Because if that would work, like Martin Luther King Jr. would have like ended racism already back in his day. But it's still ongoing. It's still a big ongoing problem right now, and it's not really about racism. Pretty sure that the big problem is us, because we are imperfect beings. We are inclined to sin, because after the fall, man has always been inclined to sin no matter what we do. And as long as we are imperfect humans, we will continue to do evil, all sorts of evil: racism, sexism, even just hate crimes against other people, just all kinds of sin and evil. Now what we need is the changing of hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. That's why we need to submit ourselves to our Almighty Sovereign God and profess that we are depraved sinners, and that without the grace of God we are nothing, and without knowing Him fully, without knowing the gospel, without accepting Jesus Christ and changing, or letting God and the Holy Spirit change us from within, this is never gonna go away. We are gonna protest, people are gonna protest, people are gonna fight, and they may create solutions now, short-term solutions that would probably work, but this problem is gonna happen again. This is gonna come back, and all kinds of evil will come back for as long as people still do not, or still deny that we all need Jesus Christ and God's grace in our lives. So I know this is a slow burn solution, but I believe it's the only lasting solution. That we need to suppress evil. The more people who truly know Jesus Christ, the less evil there will be. And like, I believe that it's the only lasting solution to this kind of problem. And this problem, they're probably gonna get over it. They're probably the whole world will be better after this, after we find solutions. But then this kind of evil will be back. Uh, Rioting, looting, hugging it out, singing kumbaya will magically eliminate racism. That kind of thinking is probably not going to happen. Like for a Christian, only Christ can defeat sin and evil, and that's how people will be able to solve a problem as big as this, as prevalent as this. Like, what do you guys think about
And I do believe that, you know, our faith, our beliefs. I think that God and the Holy Spirit can change a person. But I've also experienced, you know, in churches, you can't eradicate race, racism completely. Actually, know of an example. I didn't really want to mention names or anything, but there are churches out there that, you know, are sometimes not like mixed culturally. There's some that are like there are different churches I know that are completely Korean in the States or completely Chinese or some for Dutch or for the German. And in those type of uh, in those type of places, in those type of like racially focused places where there's just one race, or it's catering to a majority, there can be racism, and I know there is sometimes racism in that type of environment. Even and these people are proclaimed to be Christians. These are Protestants. These are people that believe in the Bible. These are people that read. These are people that pray for the Holy Spirit to lay upon them and to give them strength to overcome the problem. These are the same Christians that we see preach at church, and yet even something like that could be deep rooted. I believe that what you said, Josh, is correct. You know, there can be a change. There can be a movement of the heart. There can be a movement of the mind. The Lord has the power to give us that mindset about how we view other races. But it's I find it alarming that even though that should be the thing, and I do believe that's a way for us to overcome racism. In spite of that, there's still Christians out there that still have that negative mindset, have that racist mindset, despite proclaiming that they're Christian, despite proclaiming their faith, despite that they're with the Lord, that they're trying to uh, give the good news, spread the good news. But then when it's something that's so focused with like one particular race or one particular type of people in a church, people tend to forget that we were saved by the grace of God, and that we didn't have to do anything. The Lord, for those who are elect, were chosen, and I find that still disturbing even right now. So that's all I have to say on that point. Enrique, do you have something to say?
So, as Rory talked about racism even being prevalent in churches, I think also Josh also mentioned that faith is a way to sort of eliminate racism. But if we go back to the Bible, we will see that in Revelations it did mention that there will never be true peace. It'll always be the people of God versus the people of Satan until Jesus Christ comes again and until we're rescued by his second coming. But does that mean that we should give up? Does that mean that we should just allow racism to continue? So I think personally that faith is something that changes the life of the person who believes. So let's allow it to be that. Let's allow faith to take control of our lives. And even if we can't totally eliminate racism, let us be a model. Let us be a model to our children. Let us be a model to the youth. Because let's be honest, children learn more by imitating those who they look up to. And I think that's what people are so concerned about. They're so concerned about racism, but they forget that they themselves are racist. Like, okay, so for example, like if you're sitting in a jeep here in the Philippines, public jeep, and there are two spots left open, and there is a person who does not look that well off, and there's another person who looks quote unquote well off, where would you sit? So automatically, like our mind goes to our like previous data and our previous experiences, and of course we would like to sit next to the person who looks more well off, in fear that if we do sit next to the person who doesn't look well off, something bad, quote unquote bad, might happen. So let's just remember that racism will never be totally gone. It's I think it's more of a social thing. Like it's sometimes we're quote unquote racist not just because of someone's race, but because of how they look. And it's been programmed into us. And I guess for us to break that cycle, we have to be responsible role models. It's like literal role models to those who we influence.
But I like to read Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. So we all know that we really do need Jesus Christ in our lives, no? Agreed?
Great.
Agreed.
Yeah, amen. Probably not this kind of Jesus.
Yeah.
Or
He's really good looking.
this one, another good looking guy.
The classic.
Classic. Or how about like Jesus?
I just saw that, Korean Jesus meme. Like, how many hours ago, the jacked up Jesus on the cross.